You think it's the compassionate thing to do, and I did at the time. I convinced myself it was. But that's not all the story, because 5 years on, there's nothing compassionate or dignified about it, and I will regret it till the day I die.
It has been almost 7 years since the repeal of the Eighth Amendment, when the right to life of the unborn was removed from the Irish Constitution. People will remember the scenes in Dublin Castle when the vote was announced and how the ending of life was celebrated. Sadly, what the pro-life movement predicted back in 2018 has come to pass. There has been the expected but still shocking skyrocketing increase in the number of abortions that are taking place year on year. And this has been coupled with the profound and systemic lack of support for positive alternatives. It appears as though all roads lead to abortion. When a GP gets paid more money to provide an abortion than to provide antenatal care, you know exactly where a government stands. However, the reality is that many women are left with the painful legacy of a decision they now regret, of the path not taken. Perhaps this was a decision that many were pressured into, where many say they felt they had no other choice. On the wall of Ruth O'Sullivan's home in Ballydehab, you see the family tree containing Ruth and her husband Sean's 6 children. This is the story of their 4th child, Sive. It's not an easy story to hear, but it is one that needs to be told. Ruth bravely shares her abortion regret because she hopes that by sharing her experience, it might help others to take a different path and to hasten the reform of how women and their partners are supported in welcoming their child, no matter how brief their time together might be.
November 2018, I went for a routine anatomy scan in our maternity hospital, and it was a very cold winter's evening and a long journey from home, so I asked my husband to stay with the kids and I'll go up myself. The scan itself went well in the beginning. They told me I was having a little girl, and within minutes it became very clear that there was something up. So the sonographer at the time was kind of focusing a lot on her heart. I'm a nurse myself, so my legs started to go to jelly, and you just get that feeling where you know something is wrong. I went back in the following morning. We met with the obstetrician there. I'll just never forget, his body language, the doctor. He just asked me not to ask any questions, and he would do a thorough scan, and he would talk to me afterwards. So the lights went out and your heart's pounding and you're just willing everything to be okay. And he finished up, and I just knew straight away. He couldn't really make eye contact with me. And he went over to turn back on the lights, and I just remember him pausing and taking a breath and bowing his head. You're just thinking, okay, right. So he came back and he sat with us and he said it wasn't good. I asked him, did he know? Were we talking about Down syndrome or something else? And he said, worse, more serious. But he had to confirm it, through an amniocentesis, and which he was able to do for me straight away. But that would take a couple of weeks to confirm the actual diagnosis. So that did come back as Down syndrome. And she had a kind of a rare form of that, a mosaic form, and it affected 80% of her body. They referred us on to a fetal cardiologist, a specialist in Dublin, where they did further scanning of the baby and her heart. And I just remember in that room, there was maybe 4 doctors, all female. The main lady just, after scanning the baby, she just turned around and said to us, well, in light of your baby's, condition, there are no great heroics to be done for your baby, I'm sorry. You're kind of dismissed. Yeah. I didn't really know what to think, it's when you're faced with something like that, it's very surreal. It's just the terror, it's the sheer terror and the fear and the not knowing, and I was just really afraid that she was in pain. And no one could kind of tell you that, as in, it's all very clipped, it's very formal. Nobody can tell you exactly how your baby is feeling, but as a mother, you wanted to know, was she in pain? Is she in pain? But on reflection, no one really gave us an option. No one said there's another way. There's something else that you can do. We're here for you. You become a child yourself, really. It's like you just want somebody to cuddle you up, tell you it's going to be okay. I thought I was doing what was best for her at the time. But no one actually gave us another option. No one said, you're going to regret this, or did you ever think about down the road, remorse? Yeah. My final memories of leaving the hospital at that time was I was given a memory box. So the baby is still alive, she's still alive and you can feel her moving in your tummy. And I was given a memory box with a little christening gown and a little souvenirs. And leaving the hospital, I had spoken to a palliative care nurse, and I remember her words were, "It's the ultimate parenting." Wasn't sure what that meant, really still unsure what that means. And then walking out of the hospital with the memory box. And then we flew to London within days of that with the memory box. It's like a day clinic. You're surrounded by pregnant women, which was very, very hard. We meet with the doctor in a small little room. He goes through the procedure, and then he gets you to sign the consent form. So I sign her death warrant, I suppose, really, and you're waiting for another hour or so. And he brings us into like an ultrasound room, myself and my husband, and that's where they do the procedures. So they injected her little heart with saline. Sorry. I don't know how I actually, to this day, that I kept my bum on the chair. But I thanked her and I told her I loved her, my husband. Another half an hour, so he brings us back in, and he just pays his respects, and he said, "I'm very sorry for your loss," which is bizarre when you think about it. The very person that you've paid to kill your baby pays his respects and says he's sorry for your loss. Just a horrific experience. We were discharged, and then that was the Monday, the 17th of December, and on the 19th I was brought back in for an induction when the labour progressed fairly quickly. Quite quick and painlessly, really. In hindsight, I wish there was kind of more pain, but I think there was enough pain there. So she was stillborn. And as I say, 10 little fingers, 10 little toes, button nose, tiny, beautiful. And the very sad thing is, we got to spend 4 hours with her after she was stillborn, and then I was discharged, and I put back on my jeans and I walk away from my little baby, and I have to leave her behind for 3 weeks. How is that natural? It's not. And I'll just never forget that nurse wheeling her away from me and leaving her behind. It's not natural. It's not compassion. That added trauma to trauma, and I was trying to find a way around that. There is no way around it. the truth hurts, but you need to be told the truth. And as I said, hindsight once again, but I just wish at the time somebody was strong enough to actually take us on and say, have you thought about this? Have you thought about down the road? Have you thought about how it will affect you and your family? You're just a problem that needs to be kind of maybe pushed on because people are uncomfortable with it. They don't know what to say, they don't know what to do. But there didn't seem to be many options given at the time. Some women might never acknowledge their remorse or their regret in this lifetime. I seriously doubt that any woman who's gone through something like this or who's gone through an abortion, that it doesn't affect them. They may choose not to talk about it, but they carry it. They need to be able to express themselves without fear or shame or being cancelled. This is the other side of abortion. You cannot wipe that out.
Ruth's story raises many questions about the quality of care people receive when dealing with an unplanned pregnancy or after receiving a life-limiting diagnosis for their unborn baby. And also about how the issue of abortion regret is being sidelined or ignored. The level of denial is breathtaking and is on record. A member of the Oireachtas even went as far as claiming in a Dáil exchange that abortion regret was, I quote, makey-uppy. So what needs to change? Dr. Trevor Hayes is a leading obstetrician based in Kilkenny. We asked him to give his reaction to Ruth's story and to give us his view on what changes are needed to ensure that women are better informed and supported.
I'm very impressed with her honesty, with her transparency, and for her ability to show her dreadful regret. That's a very heroic thing to do. And this should be viewed through the lens of a mother who's had heartache, who's had regret. And this is not an isolated story. This is many stories of many women that have lost their babies. She would have had dreams of this child being part of her family, being born in a very good way with no problems, and unfortunately was given a devastating diagnosis of fatal abnormality. Now, Patau syndrome is a trisomy of chromosome 13. A vast majority of these babies miscarry or are in stillbirth. 90% generally die within the first year. But she should have been given an alternative pathway. If she had an umbrella of safety and support, she may have contemplated a far better pathway for her and her family, because she's definitely suffered as well as her partner. And albeit if the baby only lasted 3 to 4 hours, it would have been a special time for her and her partner. I think the government hasn't helped. I think the HSE, by its organisation and structure, are there for one pathway and they want to fully support that pathway. They should be as much a financial and supportive pathway for the alternative where she could carry the baby through, where she could get consistent care, where she could get appropriate support from health personnel, as well as social work support when baby comes home, as well as any infrastructure that might be indeed needed in the house. Babies with abnormalities are undervalued, but the parents would love the child the way they would love any child. That's why they're parents. And I don't think this is valued enough. I think society is letting people down and women down, and certainly undervaluing the child. A child is a child, whether the baby has fetal abnormality or not, it's still a child. And you can't put a value on that.
We started with the scenes in Dublin Castle in 2018, celebrating. However, what has followed over the last 7 years has meant tens of thousands of lives have been lost, and tens of thousands of women have been let down. Ruth's story should be required listening for anybody who cares about women's health. Ruth regrets the path she took and grieves that she was not guided along a different way. She has shared her story to help all those who might one day come to a similar crossroads. Mother and baby deserve better. Hopefully, Ruth's courage and her honesty in telling her story will be a turning point and will lead to real reform. And that day will come soon.